course, you've got the other extreme of not humble enough. People who are arrogant, entitled, selfish. They want extra rights and privileges. They want 2 helpings of cake. You want to be somewhere here in the middle. And to understand that life can and it will go on without you. That does not mean that you're not valuable. Of course you are. Of course you're right. It doesn't mean that, just because life doesn't start and stop at your convenience doesn't mean that you don't matter. Gold and diamonds are precious. Why? Because they're rare. People give lives for gold and diamonds, which is always such a strange thing. Why? Because they're precious. Yeah, but you're a human life. Aren't you more precious than all of that combined? No, because there's 8 billion of us. Stop looking here, dude. Start looking here. And you look out and you see how massive the universe is, how incredibly massive the universe is. And in all of the universe, there's only one you. Wow, but there's 8 billion of us. No, dude, you're different, man. And every day, that's what's incredible, that every day you're different. You never step into the same river twice. You never experience the same song twice. And that means that you are entirely 100 completely unique as an individual. So if gold and diamonds are precious because they're unique, then how much more unique are you? How much more precious are you? Sorry, Scanlon, I just don't see it. It's self-deprecating. Scanlon, you're right. I'm the most important thing to ever exist. Solipsism, it's too much. Somewhere in the middle. Treat yourself like you matter, because you do. And therefore that means you should treat everybody else like they matter, because they do. So we have privileges, which are kind of things beyond just rights. In other words, you don't really deserve it, but you still can get it. Okay, good. All right. You think that being remembered, do you think that life going on, how about this? Is being humble a privilege?
Yeah.
How do you mean that?
Because we can always choose to either be humble and like talk lesser of ourselves instead of being an asshole and be like, I'm the best at this, I can beat you in that, I can do that better than you.
Yeah. But it sounds like you're talking about behavior then, not attitude. Like you said, you can always choose to talk about yourself. Yeah. Because if it's a personality, if it's a characteristic, a personality characteristic, then I don't know. I mean, I guess you can talk differently. Like for example, I struggle with arrogance. I do struggle with that one a lot, quite a bit. And it's something that even if you could imagine me right now, if you could only imagine me when I was, 15, 16, and it was really, really bad. As bad as it is now. In fact, that's one of the reasons you'll hear me joke about myself and self-deprecate right now, because I realize that that's a dragon in my life that I have to check, I have to verify. And once in a while, if you might see it pop up in class, and if it does, I'll usually point out and go, there's that arrogance I was talking about, But I try really, really hard to keep it under wraps, because even if you can't control the feeling that you have, you can at least control how you express it. You can at least control what you say. If you think you're the greatest, you can still walk around and say, whatever. An example would be like if Michael Jordan were to walk in here. I think I've used this one before. And if he were to walk in and say, hey guys, it's the GOAT, we would be like, what an arrogant jerk, Does Michael Jordan think he's the greatest to ever play? Well, probably, because he was. Even if you disagree, you might say, it's LeBron. Fine, it's debatable, but Michael Jordan still probably thinks he's the greatest. LeBron James probably thinks he's the greatest. If both those guys come in, they both have a claim to that. Now, do you think that they're completely unaware of it? Like, I don't realize I'm the greatest. No, of course they realize they are. Whether or not they say it is different. And also, whether or not they say it will have a lot to do with how we feel about them. For some reason, we'd rather have Michael Jordan come in here and lie and say, I was okay, I just worked hard, I was average, I just worked really, really hard. For some reason, we such a wonderful, humble man. Well, he's not really humble, he's a liar. He's talking humbly. But sometimes that's enough because you can't control. Like if you're angry, does that mean that therefore you should go out and just behave like you're angry with everybody? No, you're making the world a worse place. So maybe at the very least, you can at least pretend to be in a good mood. And even if people realize that you're not, it's still going to be appreciated. with the exception of very few people in your life, most people would probably rather you pretend like you're in a good mood, even if you're not in a good mood. There are probably a few people in your life who would want you to express how you're really feeling. But by and large, the world and most of the people around you probably would rather you just pretend like you're in a good mood. And by the way, when you do that, you're going to actually make the world a better place because the people around you are going to be in better moods. If you go out and you express every negative impulse that you feel, you're probably going to negatively impact people around you. So you almost have an obligation to pretend like you're in a good mood when you're not. But then you're not being real. Okay, Joseph Stalin was real. Would you rather him have pretended that he didn't hate capitalists? You know, if he did, well, there'd be 30 to 50 million more people alive, except for that. Yeah, I know that's an extreme, but you get the idea. That's where it leads. And so maybe pretend to be in a better mood than we are, and then a strange thing's going to happen. You pretend to be in a better mood, you're going to start to become the thing that you're pretending. That's why we have to be so careful about what we pretend to be, because you very well might turn out to be the thing that you're pretending to be. And so if you're pretending to be successful, well, maybe you'll turn out to be successful. If you're pretending to be somebody who's always like in a bad mood, in a dark mood, you might turn out to become somebody who's in a bad and dark mood. So be careful what we pretend to be. But having said that, if you pretend like you're in a good mood, you might become in a good mood, and people around you might react to you in a very positive way, which then is going to put you into a good mood, maybe. But then again, that takes a bit of humility. You have to be humble to do that, rather than look at it and say, I should be able to express however I'm feeling because the world revolves around me. The whole universe revolves around me. No, it doesn't. And I think we all accept that. But there should be some things in your life that do revolve around you, and figure those things out, because the other side of being too humble is that you become self-deprecating. Well, I'm one of only 8 billion people on this planet, so therefore, what do I matter? What do you matter? You're one of 8 billion people.
You don't realize that you can make a big difference from what you said to me. Like, if I was to say you should act this way, like 20 people, then those people can say that to 20 more people. And it's gonna keep growing and growing and make a big difference.
Hopefully, yeah. Hopefully it makes a big difference. And so we can underestimate the impact that we have. But then again, that's also, like our value then sounds like it's related to the impact that we have on other people. In other words, our value is only realized in a community. And that can be a dangerous thing too, because what if you don't feel like you belong to a community? I wonder if anybody in here feels like that, like, I don't really belong with my friends. I don't know how many of you are counting those days down because you're hanging out in a friend group. And I ask this because I talk to the seniors every year, hanging out in a friend group, and you're just like, I don't feel like I relate to them anymore. I don't feel like I connect with them anymore. I'm almost counting the days till graduation because I'm gonna get along with them just long enough to get along with them, and then I can go do my own thing. Because as you get older, of course, you start to develop more of yourself and you start to grow apart. And I wonder how many of you are going the opposite direction and holding on as long as you possibly can to high school. Because as long as you can stay here, your life has some kind of value and meaning. That goes back to what you were asking me before about if I go to homecoming or not. I have so much trouble going to homecoming. It's so depressing for me. You see these guys who are putting on Letterman's jackets that have shrunk over the years, from being in storage. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It just doesn't close anymore like it used to. And you see all these people who come back, and it's like they try to relive that high school thing, even if it's just for one more night. And it's clear that for their lives, for a lot of them, they peaked in high school. And then everything for them has been kind of like a slow descent downhill from then. And so they come back for this one night, hoping to try to recapture it every year or every few years. And some of the saddest conversations that I've ever heard in my life began with, remember when? Remember that time, remember this, remember that. And there's nothing like terrible about reminiscing. But then, if I were to ask you, so what's going on in your life right now? I hope that you could say more than what used to happen in your life. But instead, like, that was really cool back then. But check this out, here's what's going on today. Here's what I'm up to now. It would, it's something that one of my former students said to me recently. And for some reason, it didn't strike me until he said it. I mentioned to him that I started surfing a few months ago, and he just goes, that's why I like talking to you, Scanlon. Every time I talk to you, I talk to him every few years. He says, every single time I talk to you, you're up to something new. There's something new going on in your life. There's something that you're excited about doing. And he's right, and I do that intentionally, but for some reason, it's like the way he phrased it, And he said, it just kind of reminds me there's always a lot of stuff out there that you can get into and find new meaning in. Like that's dope. That's dope, I mean, at what point is it too late to start, I don't know, fill in the blank? If any of you guys, play softball, and then you're counting the days until the end of your senior year, you can't play softball anymore. Oh, there's that for high school softball leagues. There's things that you can do. But there's also mountain climbing. You ever go mountain climbing? You ever go skydiving? You ever go surfing? You ever go scuba diving? Please don't go scuba diving where they're surfing. That's scary as hell, man. It happened to me a few weeks ago. I was out there sitting on my board, and all of a sudden this dude popped up from underneath the water. Just saw that, his snorkel, not snorkel, but the breathing apparatus. This guy just came. I thought he was a seal at first, like a seal, not the Navy kind. And he pops his head up, and he was back down under the water. And I'm like, there's a human being down here, and I had no idea. And then I thought that'd be pretty cool to scuba dive like that in the ocean. That's pretty dope. I wonder what he's running into, because I know what I'm running into, and so I'm wondering what this guy's running into. That guy. I mean, I see little baby sharks out there. Don't sing it. And they go a little bit further out, so I'm thinking they must come into the full-size sharks. That's pretty cool. There's so much out there to do. There's so much out there to do. But you have to be humble enough to know that you don't know what you don't know. Tell me if you've heard that before. You don't know what you don't know. And therefore what that should hopefully do is open up your I was going to say imagination, but more like your excitement. The idea that there's so much out there to do. And if you find yourself stagnant, starting a lot of your conversations with, remember that time that I have a good friend of mine right now, it drives me absolutely insane. He begins so many of our conversations with, did I ever tell you about the time my brother and I, did I ever tell you about the time that my dad and I, yeah, I heard them all. I've heard them all. But if I ask him what's going on in his life right now, there's not much going on in his life right now. Unfortunately, he has a lot of abilities and talent, but there's nothing going on in his life.
Sounds like he's stuck in the past.
Yeah, and by the way, his past is not that glorious. The stuff he's talking about is not like, did I ever tell you about that time that I saved a skydiving scuba diver's life? There's never anything like that. Did I ever tell you about the time that my friends and I put crazy glue on the door handles at in school? In other words, they're all going back to high school, all of these stories. And it's just like, dude, you're 12, 13, 14 years removed from that. What are you doing now? And sometimes there's an inability on our part to move on because we're not just humble, we're self-deprecating. There's too much there. We don't think that we really are capable of doing much more. We don't think that we can move on. We oftentimes will say it's too late. When I was an undergraduate at UCLA, I had a friend of mine used to go to school with me, and that's it. He wasn't enrolled, he wasn't registered, he wasn't paying for classes. I would drive by his house in the morning, pick him up, and then I would take him to school with me. He would go to the classes, he'd participate in the discussions, he would even write some of the essays. He did all the reading. We would drive to and from school talking about this stuff. He was fascinated by it. And then as I went to my second to last year, he was saying, I just wish I could have done this, man. I just wish I could have done this. I'm all, why don't you? We were like 20 years old. And he's like, well, it's too late now. I mean, 20, I think he was a year older than me, so he's 21 or 20, he was 20 or 21. And I'm like, well, why don't you do it? He's all, it's too late now. Well, it's not too late now. So I'll do it. By the time I finish, I'll be like 25, 26, something like that. I'll be older than everybody else. Like, but if you don't do it, you won't ever do it, And he's like, yeah, I hear you. And by the way, he would turn in his essays. He would still get B pluses and A minuses on. Really, really smart guy, very smart guy, and engaged in the material. But why didn't he ever pursue anything? And the last time I talked to him, by the way, he's working as a security guard over at Staples Center, minimum wage. He sits in a hallway, and his job is that during events, he's supposed to tell people, you can't come down this hallway. He's supposed to make sure no one walks down this hallway. That's a guy who would get B pluses and A minuses at a top university without even being enrolled in it, without even paying for it, just because he wanted to. And now he tells people not to walk down hallways. He's on Section 8 housing, and he has a daughter. And all of his life is just kind of like all of these what ifs. And I talk to him, and I never remind people about those kinds of things, but he'll bring it up once in a while. You know, man, I remember that time you told me I should have just enrolled. And like the time, it was like multiple times I would say that to him. But I understand. I understand him, man. And I understand that in his case, it's self-deprecation. He doesn't think that he can do it. He doesn't think he's good enough. He doesn't think he deserves it because of kind of how he's been treated in his life. Of course, you've got the other extreme of not humble enough. People who are arrogant, entitled, selfish. They want extra rights and privileges. They want 2 helpings of cake. They're too much. You want to be somewhere here in the middle, and to understand that life can and it will go on without you. That does not mean that you're not valuable. Of course you are. Of course you're right. It doesn't mean that, you know, just because life doesn't start and stop at your convenience doesn't mean that you don't matter. Of course you matter. I mean, there are 8 billion people on this planet, and we can scratch our chins and frown and just be like, I don't matter. I'm one of only 8 billion. None of us matters. I don't know, dude. Gold and diamonds are precious. Why? Because they're rare. People give lives for gold and diamonds, which is always such a strange thing. Why? Because they're precious. Yeah, but you're a human life. Aren't you more precious than all of that combined? No, because there's 8 billion of us. Stop looking here, dude. Start looking here. You look out and you see how massive the universe is, how incredibly massive the universe is. And in all of the universe, there's only one you. Well, but there's 8 billion of us. No, dude, you're different, man. And every day, that's what's incredible, that every day you're different. You never step into the same river twice. You never experience the same song twice. You ever listen to a song multiple times and all of a sudden, like you hear something you've never heard before in the background somewhere, you're like, oh, huh, I've never noticed that before. I wonder if the artist, if they heard you say it, would be like, yes. I was in the studio 2 extra days trying to get that one little sound in the background that you finally heard. And those kinds of things are all over the place, man. You guys know that when you guys leave for the end, before I leave at the end of the day, I move at least 5 things around in this room, shift things around. The room that you walk into is never the same twice. And I'm not just talking about the board over there, which I still don't see how in any way I'm like Hitler, but whatever.
If there's God and scam is God.
Yeah, but we don't look alike, we don't talk alike, we don't have the same ideologies. I don't know, man, whatever. But as long as you don't write anything on, with very few exceptions, that board is yours. But yeah, move 5 things around this room. It's funny when I say that, people now start to look around. And I bet when you come in here now, for the next few days, you'll probably look around, and then that will wane off and you'll stop looking around. But there's 5 things I change every day in some way. Little things, not massive things, little things. And I'm not just saying like, oh, I move the screen over a little bit. No, like I move the location of several things in this room every day. Why? I just think it's interesting. Not to catch you not paying attention, it's not that at all. But it's a reminder to myself that if you show up here on if you show up here on Thursday, it's not the same you who was here on Tuesday. It's not the same you who's going to be here next Tuesday or tomorrow on Friday. You never step into the same river twice. And that means that you are entirely 100 completely unique as an individual. So if gold and diamonds are precious because they're unique, then how much more unique are you? How much more precious are you? Sorry, Scanlon, I just don't see it. It's self-deprecating. Scanlon, you're right. I'm the most important thing to ever exist. Solipsism. It's too much. Somewhere in the middle. Treat yourself like you matter, because you do. And therefore that means you should treat everybody else like they matter, because they do. But first and foremost, treat yourself like you matter, because that's one thing that a lot of people struggle with. If you've got that part taken care of, dope. Now you can kind of expand out from there. But first things first, man. Life can and will go on without you. That doesn't mean you don't matter. Doesn't mean you don't matter. It's just a statement of fact. I guess the question is, what are you going to do with that time now that you're here? Questions, comments, concerns, complaints, criticisms, critiques? Happy Thursday.